Right, everybody, welcome to another cast here on the Game Wisdom channel. We're going to be trying to do something special here, as we're going to be kind of doing a trial run of a podcast or ongoing series about motivation when it comes to gameplay and keeping somebody invested in the game. And my guest here, Silas, is the one who brought things up and want to see if this could be a very interesting ongoing series. He's currently working on the upcoming game. I'm afraid my mind is slipping on, but I will let you introduce yourself, so go right ahead.
All right. So I'm Silas Talley. I'm the creative director at Project Ambitious Games. We are currently making a third-person shooter MOBA hybrid game called Revn. You can check that out at revngame.com. We're on Twitter, Instagram. We've got a Discord server, and we're currently in closed alpha. So if you like what I have to say about game design, or you just want to try a game, you should sign up and try our game out.
Yeah.
There's a little plug.
Silas, you're coming in just a tiny bit low. If you could maybe just raise your volume a little bit.
Let me see what I can do about that. I can yell. Can you up my volume in Discord? I don't know. I'm not sure I can control that.
Let's see. I think I have you as loud as I can. I can try raising up my speakers a little bit here. Let's see. I'm just afraid it may get too loud, but we'll see what happens.
And is it possible to uncompress my body on stream? I know I'm I'm a little thin. It looks like you kind of stretched it to fit that full space.
You want me to stretch you out a little bit there?
Yeah, it looks like you've got the scaling on OBS set a little. Is it possible to just reset the scaling? Because it kind of looks like you.
Let's see.
I'm not sure how to do that personally.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, Thorn Falcon. I was on the cast before. I think this is my third appearance.
Wait, let's see. Okay, so I reset that, and then if I move you over here.
That looks good.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
All right. Yeah, and after all the lovely live technical difficulties here, we finally got things, I think, somewhat straightened. But yeah, so we did play Revn before, and Silas has been a previous podcast. We talked about multiplayer balance. I think you came on for another discussion as well.
I believe so. Yeah. I don't remember which one it was, but I've been on here once or twice.
Mm-hmm. So I guess the first thing then, for the people watching, what made you want to kind of suggest this topic about motivation when it comes to gameplay?
So I'm going to be honest. I'm stealing most of this from a really wonderful GDC talk from Jason Vanderberg. He did a talk in 2016 at GDC called Engines of Play, How Player Motivation Changes Over Time. And I watched this video several times. I watched it when he first did the talk, and I've watched it pretty much every year as sort of a refresher on just a lot of really good ideas about how to design good games. And I was showing it to one of my good friends like last week, and I was watching it, and I had this idea of, hey, why don't we take his principles and just apply those to existing games? Because he does a segment in the talk where he takes different games and he sort of runs them through his way of like designing a game. He goes, okay, well, this is what the game's strengths are. This is what was important to them as designers.
Mm-hmm.
This is what they succeeded at. And I had a lot of fun just watching it. I was like, well, why can't we do that to just all kinds of games? Just sort of see what we can learn by doing that.
Yeah. And I think what you said there is a very important point about why should we learn about what motivates somebody to play a video game. And I think this kind of gets at one of the things we talk about here on Game Wisdom is the art and science of games. Because there are developers who don't really understand, why somebody is so attentive into this part of a game versus another aspect. And it really is something that if we can better qualify it to people, it will make it a lot easier to design games, especially those that are more on the high concept or more like mechanically driven titles, stuff like Dwarf Fortress, Factorio, Stellaris, etc., etc.
Mhm. Right. And I'm going to. I think at some point I'll be able to switch what I'm sharing on Discord. So I'm just going to try this right now. I want to see if I share my screen,
Yeah.
how it's going to end up cropping to you.
There we go.
Oh, perfect. All right, so that'll show up just about fine. I can resend that too if I need to, because I don't know how well it's going to go switching between that and my camera.
You have to move you around a little bit, but not too bad.
I'll just recenter myself. So if you want to keep the cropping centered on me, I'll just make sure I
Okay.
center the image when I'm working on it. So this is the chart that Jason proposes for analyzing games, and so really there's he proposes that there's four engines of play that sort of motivate a player to be interested in a game and to engage with it. And those engines of play sort of break down into these different graphs, basically, where you've got fantasy versus realism, building, exploring, whether a game takes skill, doesn't take skill, whether it's grindy or not grindy, co-op, combat, mechanics, context. Context is like story, multiplayer versus single player, calm and thrill. So you sort of got all these different aspects of a game, and so I think what we were going to do tonight was we were going to take a couple of games that you and I have played, and then sort of plot them out on this chart and figure out, maybe what was important to them when they were designing the game, or what the end result was. And just again, more sort of technical details here. I think the idea is that if it has this aspect, it's got it at like one level, and then if it's good at it, it's the second box, and if it's trying to be like the best in the world at that, it fills in the third box along that axis. So I'll try and fill this in with my amazing art skills as we go along. So having gone through all that, what game are we starting with tonight?
Well, let's see. I know I gave my list of games. I've been playing Gemcraft Frozen Wrath, Darksiders Genesis, and Monster Hunter World primarily. I guess for you, what games have you been playing?
Recently, I've been playing a bit of Rainbow Six Siege. That's sort of my go-to game to play with friends right now. But it's really only a couple times a week. I wish I had more time because I'm so bad at it. And before that, I was telling you, I think it was about a month ago, I was trying to finish My Friend Pedro, which is a lovely little indie game. So I was going to suggest that we do My Friend Pedro. I think it's a really clever game that does a lot of design stuff really well, and I'm kind of curious where it falls on this design chart.
Okay. Yeah, let's start with that one then, because I think we can both kind of talk about that. And Thorn is well familiar with Rainbow Six Siege. He got me to play that game, and pretty much that was like an hour of my life that was just pain of multiplayer. I had a similar experience when I tried to play Counter-Strike Go, and how much fun that is trying to jump in with no experience.
Yeah, R6 Siege is not an easy game. I'm not good at it right now, but I have friends who are good at it, so it's just kind of I tag along, let them carry me. Yeah, as I see Donnie's over in chat, he said, "Can we do it on a game like Stardew Valley?" Yes, I think we should do Stardew Valley. I just started playing Stardew like a week ago. My friend is a really big fan of the game, and so I got the game to learn how to play it with her. I have not really done much with it, so I think I played about an hour of Stardew. So maybe once I've gotten a couple more hours in, we can break it down. Unless Josh has, if you've played it to the point where maybe we can just go off of your experiences, we could also do it that way.
Oh yeah, I played a whole lot of Stardew Valley. I've been playing a few years. I know they've added in multiple updates, but I did play pretty much like, I guess, quote unquote end game of having like my farm fully done and things like that.
Okay. All right. Well, let's start with starting. Or I'm sorry. Let's start with My Friend Pedro then, since we both played it,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess so. The first thing we can talk about is like fantasy versus realism. Like, is the game fantasy? Which I think is a pretty easy thing to answer.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
when you're
Yeah.
having a talking banana following you around and you can spin, kick a frying pan, shoot the frying pan, have the bullets bounce around, and you do all that before you land, I don't know how realistic that one is.
Yeah, so it's got fantasy. I think from a realism standpoint, it also has. Let's pick. Um, so I think from a realism standpoint, it does lean into realism in the fact that the guns are based
Mm-hmm.
on realistic guns. But I would definitely would not argue that it has any more than just bare minimal realism. It
Mm-hmm.
has realistic guns or realistic. It has guns that are inspired by real guns, but definitely more a fantasy game in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of building, there's really no building in the game.
Yeah. No real.
There's
It's not really exploration either. It's pretty much you going through the track of each level, seeing how well you can do.
yeah. I mean, yeah, you're right. The game is very linear. There really isn't any exploration. I don't even think you can take multiple routes through any of the
Mm.
levels. I can't remember any levels where there was multiple like routes or choices in that way. Um, I think the fantasy in the game is pretty good. It's not maybe the best in the world, but it's definitely pretty good. And I'm butchering this graph. You know why? Because I didn't put this on a separate layer. This is my art skills. I run a video game company. I don't do the art. I certainly don't do the art. So here we go. Cool. Yeah. So I guess maybe then we can talk a little bit about, does the game take skill? You know, and how much skill does it take?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Let's see.
I
Oh.
think that there's definitely a lot of, at least when I was playing it, there's a lot of trial and error, and the combat's almost like a puzzle. So in that way, it takes skill.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the less skill. I mean, there's different difficulty settings in the game,
Mm-hmm.
but there's really not like a way to just like get through a level without figuring it out.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and I honestly felt that the skill level in the game was pretty good. Like there's a pretty good challenge in the game, um, and I failed multiple times trying to get through every level. You just try again and again until you learn the pattern,
Mm-hmm.
which I guess in some ways is work. It's like a very small type of grinding. You're trying the levels over and over again, but that's not really too much work, right? You don't really get a reward from it other than figuring it out.
Yeah.
Um,
And the better you are at the game, the less work there really is.
right. Um, and then from a co-op in combat standpoint, I mean, there is zero co-op in this game.
Yeah.
It's you and a banana against the world.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
The only kind of real interaction there is with score chasing with your friends.
that's true. I didn't think about that. I think that would sort of Jason would call that a multiplayer aspect of the game, like or no, co-op does count that. Yeah, it counts as social. So yeah, there is a social element to the game, right? There's scores. I'm glad you mentioned that. It's actually I think really important to the game, right? It's you're trying to get a score and you can share it with people. Also, I love the GIF generator in that game. Um, do you remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can get like your most exciting kill and have that sent out to all your friends.
Yeah, at the end of every level, they would show you like, here's an automatically generated GIF of your best kill from this level, and you can just click a button and it sends it to Twitter automatically. I thought that was awesome. Me and some of my friends were both doing that, and it was a really cool way to like show people how cool the game was when it first came out. because it was an indie game made by one developer.
Yep.
And I think that was genius from a marketing standpoint, and like just telling people about the game. It's like, here, click a button, it sends to Twitter, everyone can see how cool this game is. Combat, it's got lots of combat. In fact, I think the combat is like one of its most important attributes, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not particularly complicated. It's point and shoot and slow down time, and you've got it's 2D. So, but mechanically, I think the game has some really good mechanics. Like that's where I would feel confident giving it that final I think the graph is supposed to represent the first block is having 60% is okay, you have it. The second block is that 50% of it being good, and the final 5% of trying to be the best at something. And I would argue that the mechanics in My Friend Pedro are in that 5% category of just being really unique. Because you have the slowing down time, you have the multiple aiming. It's something that you don't really see a lot in games where you could lock on and shoot 2 different targets.
Mm-hmm.
And context is story, so how much context is given to the player in My Friend Pedro?
Not really a whole lot. The story's just it's just there to kind of center the gameplay, and then it's not really used for anything else or bookended.
Yeah, it has it, but it's not particularly good or central to the gameplay. There's a banana, you go and kill things.
Don't Eyes is asking in chat, what is the goal of this breakdown? So for the people watching, what is, why are we doing this? What do you think we are getting out of it?
I guess I'm trying to just learn about why these games were designed the way they were. I think sort of the idea of this was just going into what type of game is it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we can sort of talk about the things that made it that game, and maybe what would appeal to a player. Because some players, story is really important, right? They
Mm-hmm.
want to play a game that has really good storytelling. And a lot of times it's RPGs or just other games with a lot of cinematic storytelling to it. And sort of the goal of this breakdown is to show that okay, this is a game that it didn't focus on story. So we're just sort of learning about what types of players might like these different types of games.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure there's a massive takeaway from this. I'm just sort of having a fun exercise here, a fundamental exercise to think about what makes this game work the way it does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like we said, this can be a really good idea of an ongoing series where we can maybe in the future do these in shorter bursts instead of I'm sure this will be at least 30 minutes to an hour, this cast, but in the future we can maybe drill things down further and make it more of a repeatable topic, focusing more on the games rather than the concepts.
Yeah, I think this is sort of us exploring this idea and figuring out okay, how do we break these down? I would love to do a series where once a month we sit down, we analyze maybe a handful of games, and we can just spend 10 minutes, go through, and once we sort of got a formula down for breaking them down, I think it'll go a little quicker. And so the final box is the man, I really need to remember exactly what he called these boxes. I feel bad butchering them. I'm going to just go quickly through the talk. All right, he gave a really great talk. Where is it? Cool. So this is the other slide that I wanted to copy and paste out that I should have done as preparation for this. Let's hide that. Let's put it there. So each of these boxes, this is the core concept that they represent: novelty, challenge, harmony, and stimulation.
Mm-hmm.
So going back to these, so in the final box, the stimulation box, how do we feel about stimulation in My Friend Pedro?
It's definitely not a calming game, that's for sure.
Yeah, That's true. It's definitely a thrill based game. There's almost no calm elements to it. You just keep going forward. You die. You push forward.
Mm-hmm.
I think the calm elements to the game that I would say it has a little bit of calm in the puzzle solving where you're platforming and not fighting enemies, because there are some levels that are just platforming,
Mm-hmm.
or sections of levels that are just platforming. And I think it's more on the thrill side. And does it do the platforming well?
Mm, I think it was more or less like serviceable. Like I wouldn't put it as like one of the best platformers I played, but it did feel responsive. It didn't feel like it was like hard to control, anything like that.
Okay, yeah, because I don't really play a lot of platformer games, so for me to
Mm-hmm.
compare My Friend Pedro to other platformers is really something I can't do. I bought the game because I watched a couple of trailers where I saw this dude with a banana doing backflips and shooting at enemies, and I was like, that looks cool. And the game is entirely single player, right?
Yeah.
It's not a game you play with other people. Um, it's just a single player game. So I think that sort of fills out our chart. This is why I didn't finish art school. I went to art school. I did not graduate with an art degree. But so here you can sort of see a rough breakdown of My Friend Pedro, and at least how we see it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess, is the game like successful at the mechanics? Because like that's what it tried to be. I think best at. Like that was its main focus.
Well, I think for me, it started to get a little bit repetitive. And I think that's one of the issues that we kind of see with games that have such a strong focus on mechanics, but don't necessarily grow them out. And I'm trying to think, there was a game that we just played on stream. It wasn't Trails. Oh man, what was it? Maybe somebody can refresh my memory. We were playing a game on stream where it just felt like nothing was really growing. Like it was a case where it hits you with everything right at the get go, and then doesn't really do anything else with it. An older example of a game, if you saw the game Ape Out, that was like free on Epic a few months ago.
Yeah, I never played that one. Like I said, I haven't really played any like sort of platformers in honestly ever. But I agree. I think the mechanics in My Friend Pedro were sort of all introduced in the first couple of levels, which made I remember the first like 3 or 4 levels were really good. Like I felt like it was they were hitting me with new mechanics or new ways to use the mechanics,
Mm-hmm.
and then it just got like they stopped introducing new stuff for the player to use. Like once you got like all the weapons and everything, it was sort of like, all right, now we're just going to up the difficulty and add new puzzles to the environment. They started adding like different types of lasers and stuff to dodge,
Mm-hmm.
that increased the difficulty, but you didn't get any new tools as a player.
Yeah,
Um,
and it just came to my mind. I was playing the game Tim Ruswick's Philophobia that came out last week. This is from another indie dev. And one of the issues I ran into was that the first 3 of the 4 worlds introduced a new player mechanic to the game. The fourth world does not. And that last quarter of the game began to drag on for me because it didn't feel like I was doing anything new. It felt like the growing period of the game had stopped.
mhm. Yeah, so I think at that point, like as a designer, you're hoping that the player, yeah, like what is the player learning at that point? Like what are they doing? Because they've already gotten all the tools. Is it just an opportunity for them to try the tools? Because like you have to maybe just you'd have to keep introducing new things to
Mm-hmm.
the game world. Make it more difficult, add new ways to use those existing tools. Otherwise, it's going to become stale.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, that's sort of what happened. And I think this gets more into the SDT theory and more stuff about like player retention
Yeah.
and uh,
And
how.
player retention is, I think, a major part of this discussion because obviously you working on a multiplayer based game is certainly a big part of that. And it's something that we are seeing a lot from the live service audience of trying to keep invested in a game that isn't just raw mechanics over and over again. Because one of the things I think we've seen is that the very best live service games aren't just about pumping out raw levels. Every week we're on at least 5 new missions for this game. And something like Warframe would probably be a very fascinating game to talk about. I know quite a few of the people watching this are well aware of what Warframe is. But
yeah, I played it. I love to break down Warframe.
Don't Eyes has a few questions. How important is it for games to be really good at one or more of these interest types? Is there a popular game that doesn't do any of these things strongly?
Okay,
and that's a good one.
That's a really good question. I think that you don't have to be good at all of these categories. I think this isn't, and Jason says this in his talk, the objective isn't to like max out on all the different categories, right? In his talk, he starts by analyzing Minecraft, and his analysis of Minecraft is that it is like it's good at almost everything and best in class at a lot of things, which makes sense because Minecraft is ridiculously popular, right? And so I'm going to pull up his chart for. So this is how he broke down Minecraft. So he's saying that Minecraft is best in class for building, best in class for exploring. It's good at fantasy and good at realism. It's got some of the best in class co-op and mechanics, and it's got good story from a player-driven story, and it's got good combat. It's not the best, right? It's ridiculously best in class for like skill and being easy because you've got survival versus creative mode.
I was just about.
Which allows it to be like best in class for grinding and not grinding, and skill and not skill, again, like it's not the best in class for thrills, but definitely for calm and multiplayer and single players, right? So like Minecraft hits like all over the place, right? And he sort of shows it like that's how you can like analyze a game, but you don't have to be Minecraft, right? You don't need to try for all of these things.
Yeah. And I think what's very interesting, there's 2 points I want to make from like looking at that chart. So the first one, I think getting to Andrew's point in chat, I would agree. I don't know if I would say it ranks that highly in all those categories. And like for me, like this is like the thing. I think this goes to Don't Eyes' comment about if a game has all these points, does that automatically make it a good game or make it an appealing game? And for me, Minecraft did not hold my interest. I think when we start talking about self-determination theory in a few minutes, I think that's kind of where we'll probably spend more time on that. And
right,
I think what I think.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
What I was going to say was, and I think like when you look at something like how is it a game that's both work and non-work? Like it would seem like some of these are contradictions. And one of the things you have to understand when it comes to designing some of these titles is that you can design various modes or various factors that can tweak or push or pull the game in different directions. Probably one of the most classic examples is the idea of hardcore versus softcore in an ARPG. For myself, I can't play an ARPG on softcore difficulty anymore. It just puts me to sleep. But there are people who would never purposely turn on an option that erases their character when they die.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see in chat like people are they don't necessarily agree with this analysis of Minecraft, and that's okay, right? This is one person's perspective on how they think the game holds up, and yeah, this will be different from everyone's perspective of playing the game. But I think if you were to give this sort of survey to a broad spectrum of people, right, it would sort of look like this, and that's sort of the idea. Is like figure out what type of game is it, and then does that game appeal to you? Like you're talking about like hardcore versus softcore in RPGs, right? So for you, having hardcore is really important in RPG. So that would probably fall into that skill chart, right, where it's saying like it's highly skilled and like really thrilling, right, because of that element. And so for you, you look for games that have that element to it.
Yeah. And I also want to go to Doniz's other comment, because he made some really interesting ones. Like, one is, what if you don't max out any one category? Does that mean that the game is mediocre? And I think that's a very important distinction to be made, because there are games out there that I would argue don't necessarily do a good job of motivating somebody to keep playing, or at least motivating a wide audience. But if you fall within that very niche group that likes it, it might as well, max out the charts for you or for your own personal bias. There are games. Oh, I know. We talked about this on the live show the other day, that the car mechanic simulator, who's currently working on a tank building simulator or a tank restoring simulator. Now, for a majority of people out there, the idea of cleaning up and restoring parts in a tank is not going to be the most motivating thing for you to do in the world. But if you're a fan of that kind of, very meticulous detail kind of design, it's going to, thrill you all day long.
Right. So what I pulled up here is from Jason's talk. This is his analysis of the Stanley Parable, which is a game that I have not played. But so this was his argument for Stanley Parable. He also did point out that he mistakenly gave it like too many boxes in something at some point. This was not perfect. I forget where he messed up, but
I would say maybe in the cooperation side, because it's not really a game about other people.
Yeah, so it doesn't have any cooperation elements to it, but it's this is sort of like what it was shooting for, right? Or like how it ended up. It's got fantasy and a little bit of exploration. There's no building. And it's purely a single player experience. So I've never played it. A lot of people said it was a good game, and so his argument here was that you don't have to be good at everything, right? You don't even you don't really have to be good at really anything for the game to be commercially successful. You just have to find players who like the things that you are focusing on.
And I also want to add to that, because there's a very important caveat to that point, and something that we've talked about before when we did our talk about the quote-unquote magic of the game industry, and that is you have to be aware not only of what your audience is, but also ways to try and broaden that as possible, or broaden as much as possible, because not every game, or I've said this before, there is no such thing as the game that 100% appeals to everybody. But you also have to be careful about being too niche in terms of your audience, because this is a common trap that I see a lot of indie devs make, that they'll focus so much on the 5 to 10% of their fan base that's going to love this game, and then they're going to ignore any pain points or issues with it, and it's going to basically kill the motivation for everybody else to play the game. Because the people who are 100% all in, and this is a really good tangent, a really good comparison to YouTube as well, that the people who love your content on YouTube, they don't care about anything else. I've had a discussion with some of my fans, I could make awful thumbnails, do nothing in terms of making the videos more appealing. They're going to watch it every day, or watch it whenever they can, because they're my fans. But that's not going to bring in anybody new. And bringing this back to motivation, you have to understand what drives people to play, just as you have to understand what pushes them away. And if you don't do either, it's going to kill your game's any chance of that game growing a fan base.
Yeah, and so I'm trying to just jump through the slides and stuff that were up on this talk, but that's exactly what you're talking about. Is you've got a population curve of people who are somewhat interested and then care about something, and then just really care about the product or the whatever it is that you're making, right? And that's a really good point. Is that some games, you have to make sure that you aren't making something too niche, and not making something that's too too broad because I think it's less about that and more about understanding what type of game you're making, so you know who it's appealing to, so that you can focus on the things that are most important, right? So like I would say, jumping back to back to our My Friend Pedro one, right? I'm just gonna hide all this junk. So like if this was the type of game that we're trying to make, right? And we like say we're sitting down, we're designing a game, we're designing My Friend Pedro, and we decided this is the type of game we want to make. Well, now we know, what's important to spend developer time on and developer money on, right? So we know that it's not important to spend months and months writing a script for the game because the story is not important, right? The story isn't the type of game we're making. We're not going to spend any time working on multiplayer for the game because we're just not going to have it because we're not looking for a multiplayer audience. We know that the mechanics are very important, so we should spend the most time working on the mechanics, right? So I think in some ways this is it's also a chart for developers when you're starting out to like figure out what type of game are you making, what motivations are you engaging with, so that you allocate your developers' time and resources appropriately.
And like we've said, you can't make a game that works for everyone. There is no such thing as that 100% game that everybody's going to play and love. And the very first thing you need to do, like you just said, is figure out what are the core tenets of my game. What is going to be the unique selling factor that's going to convince somebody to play my game versus somebody else?
Right. So do we want to try and break down maybe another game and do one of these charts for something a little different? There we go. Does anyone have a particular game? I know we mentioned Warframe. That might be a fun one to do. We both played that.
And Stardew Valley was borrowed too.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you or chat decide on that one. I kind of pushed for My Friend Pedro.
All right. I think Stardew would be an interesting one. It's Rainbow Six. Rainbow Six may be an easy one too.
Sure. Let's. I don't know. Which one do you guys want to do first?
Let's do Stardew. Let's talk about a game that's more on the relaxing side, because that may be an and then we could either do Warframe or Rainbow Six and kind of see what's the opposite of that game like.
Okay, so we're gonna do Stardew. I guess I've played an hour of Stardew, so you should walk me through this one.
All right. Well, let's see. If we're talking about the top chart,
right? Which chart is this? The novelty chart, right?
Yeah. Let's see. I would say there's a little bit of fantasy in the fact that we're fighting monsters and things like that. It tries to be somewhat realistic with how crops are grown. It's not going to be, like Farming Simulator or whatever number we're up to, but it would fit, I think, more on the realistic side. Exploration and builds is kind of tough. You are... the grand majority of the game is about building up your farm, earning money, but in the same breath, you are looking around the world, you're meeting people, you are trying to build relationships. Like, the world does have a factor in playing the game.
So there is exploration. I've played enough of the game to know that I had to walk to different sections and like get a fishing pole. Abby was walking me through that. She's like, "Oh, go right, go to the beach, get a fishing pole." So Donna has asked, "What is building? Is it about expression and impact?" Yes, absolutely. Building is. It's not just like, "Oh, can you make a house?" It's expression and impact in a game. So in a game that lets you customize your character in a way that like changes out your stuff, like that's also sort of an aspect of building. But there's all kinds of ways of having building in a game. You're right. It's just expression and impact in the world. So you have some exploration, you have building, you have some fantasy and realism. Would you say that it goes the extra mile on any of those things, right? Besides just having.
Not really. It never really, I think, evolves beyond its initial concept. Like, you're never going to be like having like a fully autonomous farm. Although, who knows, that may be a mod or something at this point, or at least not when I played it.
Mm-hmm. I think I would just from my 1 hour of playing it, it seems to me that building is pretty good in the game. Like, there's a lot of like you seem to spend a lot of time like making stuff for your farm. You know, so I guess that's sort of where I would see it lying. But this is my 1 hour, and it seems like chat is also kind of saying that.
Yeah, I mean, I would for Donai's point about exploration of world. Yeah, like kind of I think discovering what's going on. Is there kind of like a mysterious aspect to it? Does it like throw everything at you at the start, or do you have to kind of dig into it yourself to figure out what's going on?
There's lots of exploring. Would you guys say that the exploring is good?
No, he was just asking what that term means.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe we should hop over and talk about skill in the game. Like, is the game hard?
I think this kind of falls in that similar idea of Minecraft, that it really is, I think, as hard as you want to make it. Like, if you just want to, talk to people and make relationships, you can do that. I think my speaker went out. Okay, there we go. It's back.
So it's a very skilled game. It's just, like you said, it's as hard as you want to make it.
Yeah, but it does not have any real, I think, failure points. Like, you can kind of mess around with it and still make progress. It's not you can min-max the game if you want, but the game is not designed, I think, to like force you to do that.
Okay. So you'd also in that way it's like it's kind of like Minecraft where there's like you can play it as easily as you want to play it, right?
Yeah, like for myself, I went, I'm gonna max out every skill. I'm gonna have all the advanced stuff in the game. Gonna go all the way down the dungeon. We're gonna do that. Somebody else could play the game and be like, you know what? I just care about getting a family and making sure we have enough money at the end of the month. That's it.
So how much grind would you say is in Stardew? Is the game there grinding is work doing the same task over and over again?
Is
a couple of hours. Seems like you have to do some of that. You have to chop down the tree and chop down another tree, and
Yeah, there is a lot of grinding, I would say, because you have to raise your level up in each task in order to unlock the next new thing. So it's going to hit you with a lot of it. Eventually, you can get stuff to downplay that or mitigate it. But you're going to be spending a lot of time at the start just, manually cutting down a tree or cutting down trees one hit at a time. Go to the next area, repeat. And of course, I know everybody loved the farming minigame. Oh, I'm sorry, the fishing minigame.
Right. So I guess in that way, since you can automate it, that also gives it sort of that not work aspect of like as you evolve the game, you can make it less work for yourself. Would that be sort of a fair statement to make?
Yeah, like it unlocks new stuff that will either make tasks quicker or earn you more money for doing them.
Okay. Johnny says, is grinding required to complete the experience? Does grinding only happen when you're going an extra mile and trying to get achievements or something? Again, based on my very limited experience with the game, it seems like you do have to grind to get your resources. You can't just ignore the grinding.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be, I think, similar to Factorio in that regard, that eventually a lot of the grinding will kind of dissipate, but it's heavy grinding to get your foot in the door, get off the ground.
Okay. So in the harmony aspect of the game, the harmony engine, right? How much mechanics is there to Stardew?
There's, of course, combat and the various farming and relationship building. It does not get, I think, advanced. You're still, no matter what you're doing, you're always just picking up an object, throwing it to something else, and therefore it does its task. Like, you're not actually doing any other refining yourself. Probably the deepest thing in the game would either be the combat or the fishing, and even that is still relatively late.
Okay. And it does have combat, but the combat is, I haven't actually done combat in the game. So like, what's the combat like in Stardew?
It plays very much like a basic, like a top-down Zelda game.
Okay.
So you're walking around, you slash your sword, kill the enemies, make sure your character has enough food or energy to keep going, and just keep going down and down the dungeons.
Okay. Storytelling in the game. Does it have storytelling?
There is story to the various people of the town. You trying to figure out, what's going on with your farm. I think there's something with the superstore in the area. But a lot of people got into it for the relationship building, meeting the various people of the town.
So I think in that way, that's like really like the cooperative element of like forming social connections with the NPCs, right?
I guess so. It is about that kind of meeting other people, and while they don't necessarily like aid you when you're doing stuff, their story kind of adds to your story.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Again, I haven't really played the game, so I don't really know how strong these factors are in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't played enough to really know beyond like, okay, I know it has it, right?
Yeah, like the story, like they're not going to help you like in any way because you're doing the story. It's more about like there are people who have they really like the relationships that certain characters have or certain personalities. I'm sure there's plenty of fan fiction out there for it.
Okay. Well, I guess in that case, maybe the context in the game really does go the extra mile because like I feel like that's what I've heard about the game, right? Just from word of mouth and reviews and stuff, is that there is this really deep NPC stuff going on in there. So and people do care about it. So yeah, so maybe it has like it really has a lot of that.
I don't know if I think I would agree with Thorn. I don't think it would go too far in that regard because at the end of the day, though, they're not really like interacting with the player. Like it's not as like, and again, it's something that you can ignore if you want completely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And then in the final category, the stimulation category, sort of where does Stardew fall? Does it have multiplayer? I've heard it does.
It does have it was added in.
Okay, so it has multiplayer. It's also a single player game. It's calm, and I assume if it has combat, it's somewhat thrilling.
Yeah, but not a lot. Like again, like this is not a high stakes game, no matter how you play it.
Right. So I would say it seems like a game that's it's much more on the calm scale, right? You've got
yeah.
Remember what I've heard and playing it feels like it's a good game to play when you want to calm down and relax.
It's a zen, kind of get in the flow kind of game.
Mm-hmm. As a single player experience, is it a good single player experience?
Not bad. Again, it's one of those games that I think it either hooks you. Kind of exit all the way out there. It either hooks you all the way, or it doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Chat's saying it doesn't have the best multiplayer. I mean, like, how feature rich is the multiplayer? Like, what can you do in multiplayer in Stardew?
That I would not know. I did not play a multiplayer.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't either. Andrew is saying in chat, I think more squares would allow deeper assessment rather than a 1 to 3 star system. Yeah, I agree with that. I think the idea is that it's less of like a rating and more of like a checkbox of like, does it have it? Is it good? Are you trying to be the best at this, right? And yeah, the multiplayer is lame, but the single player is super solid, Sharky says. Okay, so maybe they are. I think as a designer, I think they were trying to make the single player like some of the best, right? Maybe we'll we'll just push it to that final block, right? And that gives us these wonderful squares. Wow, I completely butchered the word square. Um, where we can sort of get an idea of like this was what the design of Stardew is, right? You can see what aspects of the game were like important while developing it, and that hopefully matches up with the types of players who enjoy playing it. And I think personally, looking at this game, um, I could pretty easily tell you that this is not going to be my favorite type of game, right? Because I'm someone who cares a lot about multiplayer and thrill and combat and mechanics. Like those are the things that are it's usually for me it's skill, multiplayer, thrill, mechanics, and combat are the things that I look for, right? I'm very much into like competitive types of games where it's playing with other people and getting better at it. Like that's the type of games that I enjoy. So this is very opposite from that. So based on that sort of like player profile of who I am as a person, this might not be a game that I would particularly enjoy, but at the same time, it's also a very nice contrast. So maybe I would enjoy trying something new because variety is good. So I sometimes I do enjoy games like this, and I think that's just a really interesting way of like looking at a game and saying, well, is this a game that I would enjoy, right? Is this a game that I could recommend to my friend based on like what types of games I know he likes, sort of based on the other games he likes and how they fill into this system. Okay.
And to Andrew's question, he's asking, should multiplayer not be in the co-op box?
Yeah. So how does co-op work outside of multiplayer? I think co-op is it's more the idea of cooperating with things instead of combat. I can honestly we could look. Okay,
So probably more like games where combat isn't the primary gameplay loop.
Right. So the co-op falls under the harmony type of play, right? So are you looking to cause conflict in the world, right? Are you in combat versus are you more in harmony with the world and working together, whether that's with other players or playing with just NPCs, right? I think generally co-op has to do with multiplayer, but it also can be like we talked about with Stardew. Maybe co-op can just be, are you working with the NPCs, instead of against them? Because that's an important aspect of the game. And now that I think about it, like I think most games, when you see an NPC, you think of them as an enemy, right? It's a cause of conflict. I think it's more common in games to do conflict than it is to do cooperative AI. I guess sort of as an interesting discussion, like what types of games have cooperative AI, like where you like it's memorable.
Maybe even something like Dark Souls, something like non-playable or playable characters, or I'm sorry, NPCs or other people. Maybe something going back as far as like Dragon's Dogma, with having like the pawns you can bring in. Plenty of like strategy or very loose strategy games that like let you have like NPC or AI helpers. We could even say something like Thorn say, like Dwarf Fortress or Auction Not Included, where you're not really controlling the characters, you're just kind of guiding them and they do their own thing.
Yeah, and I think Foreign User says it's pretty hard to get good cooperative AI. Like it's very common for them to feel frustrating, like they're getting in your way, right? So getting good AI teammates is pretty hard or it's pretty uncommon in games. So it's something we don't see a lot of. And hopefully that's something that can change as the industry evolves and we just develop new technology or new methods of doing things.
AI is hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm actually about to start doing a lot of stuff with AI for my own game, Revn. And so I've been doing a lot of research and reading on that. And yeah, definitely AI is hard. Especially when you're trying to make AI that helps the player instead of just, fighting them. It's, it's not easy to design. I think also it's sort of it's an evolving process, right? Like you make the AI and they can do like one or two tasks, and then you figure out, oh, it's missing this, and oh, it's missing this, and you just like you keep adding to it and growing it, and it's like, well, how much time do you have in development to pour more and more time into it, right?
Yep.
And maybe that's where this sort of chart is really useful, because you can say, well, having like really good teammates, AI is not important to this game, so we're not going to put tons of time into it because that's not what the game is about. It's not what the players are looking for,
Yeah.
right?
And we saw that with Payday or Payday 2, for instance, that game did have bots, but the bots are completely worthless for stealth because they're not designed at all to help you with that. And again, I think, as you said, like, it depends on what the game is. Like, if your game is super team-based, team-player focus, you may want to have some pretty good AI to help you. You don't find people. But if it's so player or human focused that the AI, you would never be able to design AI competent enough, then it doesn't even make sense to put that in if it's just going to be a half-assed system.
Right, right, yeah. Like you said, like Payday, it has cooperative AI, but I think the design of Payday was this is a game where you squad up with your three friends. It's four players. It's supposed to be four players or four random people from the internet, and the bots are just like it's filler, right? It's not. I think the game that people always tell me had like really good AI teammates was a game that I never played. I should was the Star Wars Republic Commando games. I've heard a lot of praise for the AI teammates in that game. And I've watched some design videos and I've watched gameplay, and I think because that's a single player game and it's about being a commando in this squad of troopers, right? I think that they would have put that final 5% into that co-op box, right? We're trying to be best in class in the world. This is super important to us. It's an essential thing in the game's experience.
Yeah. Now, as a quick time check, we are over an hour in. I didn't know, like, we didn't really set, like, a soft or a hard time for this first cast. So,
Okay.
what do you feel like?
I feel like we covered two games tonight, right? We did My Friend Pedro and Stardew Valley, and I think we sort of got a good feel for maybe how this is going. So maybe we want to end the podcast now, and then we can create a list of games to cover in future episodes if people want to see that. I know I would love to do an analysis of Warframe because it's one of my favorite games, and I find it just really, really fun.
I would like to do one more analysis because I would like to. I know I'm not sure if Thorn brought this up as a joke or not, but I think Rainbow Six Siege would be, I think, one really good one. Just
All
again
right.
to see, I always like to see like the extremes and
Sure.
show like kind of how different these games are. Because if there's anything different from Stardew Valley, it would be Rainbow Six Siege.
All right, let's do our Six Siege then, and that'll be I think the final one that I have time for tonight.
Yeah.
But I'd love to put Warframe on the docket for the
Yeah,
next episode
definitely.
if your viewers want to see that.
Yeah, and Andrew has already beaten me. Like, there's not enough squares in realism to this for that chart. Like, it should go like all the way down, maybe like 3 screens in terms of realism.
Right? Yeah. It's just it's got all of the realism. So
hmm
right off the bat, we know that realism was massively important to the designers of Rainbow
Yeah.
Six Siege.
Any game that has like the peek around corner shooting, like automatically has like 2 or 3 points in realism right there.
Right, you've got that. You've got. I felt like the movement in that game was very realistic. You walking is slow,
Walk
sprinting makes a
slow.
lot of sound, you don't have jumping. I remember I saw somewhere there was a designer developer interview where they talked about the fact that you don't jump in Rainbow Six Siege, and someone asked why, and the developer was like, "Well, we talked to a bunch of real life special ops people and people who do combat, like you don't jump around the battlefield."
I know that is like so mean to say. I would just love to like see someone do like a realistic movie with just people like jumping around shooting.
Yeah, like you don't I mean, I played paintball or like laser tag and stuff. You're not bunny hopping. Like you do vault over object. You can like mantle over you go under a desk. You crouch up and you go over a countertop or something. I've done that while playing laser tag and stuff. Like you don't really jump. And I think that was a really cool thing that they recognized that and they integrated that into the game's design.
And I think to Thorne's point there, and Don't Eyes, that probably a point in fantasy again. Not, and I think this is an important thing. It's not fantasy again as in magic and spellcasting, but fantasy as in something that doesn't exist in real life, or doesn't exist at least in this form. And
Yeah,
Rainbow
I
Six
agree.
Siege features again like a very advanced gadgets. Again, this is not something that in my hour of dying in the game I didn't see too much of, but they definitely went super high military tech.
Yeah, I would agree. There is a fantasy element to it. You have technology that doesn't exist or doesn't work the way it does in the game. You've got a fantasy element to the game, and I don't know if I would say it was that like they went the extra mile on it or really anything. It is there, right? You have stuff that doesn't quite exist in the real world, but it's not really a focal point of the game.
Yeah. And
Builds and exploration. I think you do get a point in exploration because of you have to learn the maps, right?
Yeah, like it's
You
not.
have to.
Yeah, like it's not a case of you can just sit in one room and not look at anything else.
Yeah. I would also argue that it has a building element to it because you are throwing up fortifications, you're placing traps, you're fortifying the walls. You are interacting with the world, and actually that's Thorne's saying, yeah, zero building. I think the defense fortifications. I think that counts as a building element to the game, and I actually think that it's quite good. It's very unique, and they do it quite well. In my
The
opinion.
destructibility factor, I think, is a big one in this game. The fact that you are able to, maps will explode or they'll reveal holes in real time. Like, and again, like that's also another major point of realism: the fact you can shoot through very light walls.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe let's move on to the challenge box.
Yeah, just
And I
fill the
think
whole northeast quadrant. I think we're done with that. I think we're just done with that one right there.
it has insane amounts of skill, and there's really no way to get around that. Like, you can't. There's really there's no assist for for being bad at the game.
Thank you. I think that's my point right there.
Grinding? Yeah, not really. You don't. Okay, I would argue there is grinding. You have to. You can get new Blackbeard is the assistant. I've been playing Blackbeard. I feel attacked right now. There is grinding. It's not. It's grinding for your account progression, right? You play games and you get packs that give you different cosmetics, or you can get earn the currencies to unlock new characters.
I would argue that there is work by the fact that it is a competitive game. Like this is not.
The more you play it, the better you get at it.
Yeah, and the fact that you are going like this is not something where you can't be slacking on a team of 4 or 5 professional players. They'll rip you apart if you're not at the top of your game.
Right. So yeah, so that's sort of where it feels in that box. And then over in the Harmony box.
I think this is a very interesting one. It was another reason why I wanted to bring up games like Rainbow Six, Warframe, and Payday. It is very heavy on mechanics. I mean,
Hmm.
again, any game that allows you to not only crouch but go prone and have two different like fire accuracies for that definitely goes there. But
Hmm.
the developers have done a lot in terms of context. There's like bios for all the characters. I know they have a lot of like little story elements. I don't know if I would go that far into it. Like, it's kind of there as like a wrapper to it. Like, it's not the main reason why you play, but it's one of those like, I think, nice things to have.
Okay, so they have context to the game, but you don't really play for the context.
Yeah, it's same thing with like Payday 2. Like, there's a story to the game. It's as nonsensical, as you can get with that kind of thing. But people care about the characters. They have a, I guess, debatable care about the lore of it. The lore went, out the window the second they introduced Gatling guns and flamethrowers.
Hmm.
I guess,
Yeah.
why wouldn't you say full 2 mechanics, Storm? I'm just curious.
Uh, Mechanics, yeah, mechanics. I feel like is all the way on Rainbow Six Siege. It has, I would say, best in class mechanics. You've got like just having destruction to the element of destruction in the game alone. I would say gives it best in class mechanics. It has, I would say, the best in class destruction mechanics of any shooter.
Hmm. I would
Um,
say, like, it would be both very high. Oh, so he's saying more like from a complicated or technical aspects.
mhm.
I think it's one of those things that depends on, I think, your skill level. Like, if you are new to that game, like I was, it's like learning another language.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't think it's I think rating it like that 3 stars in best in class is saying that the experience from a mechanical standpoint is best in class, not like it has tons of it, right?
Hmm.
I feel like it gives it um, you know, it has best in class mechanics because of the destruction is done so well, right? Like they could have done it so many other ways where it wouldn't have been as good, but they went for like, no, we're gonna be the best at it, right?
Now, for
And
co-op and combat, I think that's the very interesting thing. Like, it is a cooperative-based shooter. Again, like, you can't play this game solo
mhm.
and expect to do well. But in the same breath, though, it does sometimes end in, very decisive, very high stakes one on one play. So the combat needs to be good in that regard.
Right. I think the combat. Would you say that the combat is? I mean, we know the combat's good. Is the combat best in class in Rainbow Six Siege? Did they try for it to be like very very important? I would say yes. Just
I have not, I wouldn't have played the game enough, I think, to make a huge determining factor there.
mhm. I think the combat, like the conflict in the game, is like there's a lot. It's entirely based around conflict, right?
Hmm.
It's you versus the other guys. You've got a lot of things going on. I think they tried very hard to have. I would give it the full 3 bars in combat because it's more than just there and it's more than just good. It was very important to them.
We could probably
Um,
spend an entire cast just breaking down what like the 3 metrics for combat would be for some of these games.
right, and cooperatively, I would also say yeah, it's good. I don't know if it's like best in class for like team play and stuff.
I
Is
wouldn't.
it It is. It doesn't seem to have a lot of uh, like support stuff in the game. From what I've played of Rainbow Six Siege, like cooperative communication is very important. Like maybe in that way the co-op is important, but you don't really have. Maybe that's more like a multiplayer checkbox, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't have like tons of support characters like you do in Overwatch. You're not buffing and healing. That doesn't like happen in every match to the point where it's critical to the game's success.
Hmm.
I've noticed, you have some support characters that can heal each other, but it's not like it doesn't seem to be like a keystone of the game's design. Uh, so in the final box, the stimulation box, uh, I the game's not calm at
No.
all. No,
No.
and the game is not really. It has single player. You can play by yourself in the I believe it's called terrorist hunt mode, where you can just fight bots. It has it, but it's not good.
The main reason you're playing this is for multiplayer. Like,
Right.
this is
Yeah.
what when they were building this game up, they wanted this to be a multiplayer game very easily here.
Yeah. Right. So that first box is just, does it have it? Right. Like, we're not even asking, is like, the second box is it good? The third box is it best in class? The multiplayer, I would say they try to be best in class, and it's very, very important because you've got
Yeah.
team play. You've got to be communicating about, okay, who do you see? Where are they?
There's
What's your plan?
tournaments, there's esports around it. Like, they wanted this to be a competitive level game, so
Yeah.
they knew that if the multiplayer wasn't going to be good, the game would have died right then and there, basically.
Right. From a thrill standpoint, is the game exciting to play and or watch?
I,
I would
would
say it's at
stressful count as thrilling?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I would say it's at least a good game for excitement. You're I get excited while playing the game or even just watching it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that would be kind of hard to say what's the difference between being good and being best in class for thrills. I think I'm trying to think of an example of a game that seems to be like best in class for thrills.
Yeah, like, that will probably be something. Ooh, that's actually a really good question. Like, my mind immediately went to kind of like the uh, jump scare, like, horror games. Like, that would be something that's very interesting to
Yeah.
watch, but not so much to play. I could even say maybe even something like Doom 2016, where you're going around the map.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah. Yeah, Doom is a good example. Doom and horror games, like games where it's just like like you've got like tons of excitement and just like energy to the game, right?
yeah,
Maybe it doesn't ever have to do with constant energy, but it's just like when you get it, it's so good, right?
yeah. And to Andrew's question, who made the game? It was Ubisoft Montreal who made it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, in that way, I would almost say that like Rainbow Six does. It's hard to say, like, does it go from good to being like best in class with
Don't.
with thrills? Because like you could say you could argue that because of player generated thrills, right? Because you can have those moments where you're the last man standing against the enemy team and you manage to win against all odds, right? Like that's
Yeah.
where it's like you're doing it really well because you have those moments built into the game.
Yeah. To Andrew's question, is calm stealth? Uh, hmm. I guess would you say like calming would be maybe more like what we describe as like a low stakes kind of game?
Yeah, yeah. I think based on that, yeah, is calm versus thrill like the stakes of the game? In that way, I would say like you have moments where the entire pressure of the game is on one player because you don't
Oh
have
god.
respawning in the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's where I could make an argument for maybe it is like really important to the developers in that way where it's like, yeah, you have these massive thrills if you're down to the last man standing that you can still win, right? If they didn't have that, if everyone could respawn, it wouldn't be quite as thrilling. You wouldn't have those moments. And calms means you can chill. Yeah, yeah. Calm is it's low threat. You're not worried about like, oh, if I fail, I have to restart or anything, right? Like I feel like it's like playing Minecraft in creative mode. There is no consequences to your actions.
There's no
stakes.
failure states. There's no real like penalty there. Even like not being even as small as like a slap on the wrist saying you lose 5 coins. Well,
Right.
the opposite end is your entire character gets wiped and the entire world is gone.
Permadeath.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is sort of where Rainbow Six Siege lines up, and then maybe let's compare that to Stardew. And it's very different in some ways. You've got Stardew, R6, and in Stardew, Can I do like an opacity layer on you? I don't know how to do art stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Can I take you and turn your... There we go. Cool. So the slightly transparent one is Stardew. Rainbow Six Siege will also change the... There we go.
Mm-hmm.
And I should have like tinted these slightly differently, but so Stardew and then Rainbow Six, they're very different, especially in the stimulation
Yep.
engine, right? The stimulation domain of play, they're almost entirely opposite in what they stress their importance on.
Yep. And I think this again goes back to kind of like one of the major points for this discussion, that you need to understand very concisely or very organized why somebody is going to play your game. Again, if like we were to kind of flip these two games for a second, like if we said Rainbow Six Siege is going to have a very expansive new single player campaign added to it, most players aren't going to care about that. Just as if Chucklefish Fish, I think that's his name, the developer, announced that the next 5 updates will be nothing but multiplayer additions, no new single player content. People aren't going to be happy with that as well.
Yeah, that's a really important point. That's important for live service games or just games with continual updates, and also maybe sequels, or like really anytime you're thinking about like, well, who am I making this for? Or who am I marketing to? Like, this is also really important for marketing and like who you're targeting. To think about like, are they going to care?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like I see you said in chat, like idle games are very calm. Games that don't deal with threat in that way. And it's also interesting that like there's some stuff where these games line up. They're both highly skilled games, right?
Yep.
Rainbow Six Siege and Stardew. There's lots of skill to them, and they both are like they've got story and it's good, right? But it's not like the most important thing to them. So you can sort of start to see like what's similar between these games. So maybe if someone does like the one game, they might like another one.
Yeah. And from a development standpoint, again, that being able to sit down, just figure out what should I prioritize. Like we could certainly expand this out. I mean, talk about stuff like personalization versus customization as well. Being or that, do you think personalization would fit into the build category at all?
Kind of. So let me pull this up again. So, uh, yeah, I would say customization does sort of. Yeah, I would say customization fits into the building category. Can I change the world? Well, you're not really changing the world, but you're just expressing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think that shoot, I know Jason made a point on this, and I am not remembering where he suggested that it fit into this theory. I'm gonna have to. I kind of want to get back to you on that one. Like I feel like, yeah, customization. It seems more to be like an expression thing than changing the world.
Mm.
You know, it's actually I do remember where some of that fits into his talk, which is it sort of fits into the final layer of his theory. Is it fits more into the satisfaction, fits into discovering the game, right? So the SDT theory stuff has to do with competence, autonomy, and relatedness, and that's where customization fits in. Is you are coming back to the game and seeing that you're the same character that you customized 2 months ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that gives you a sense of these feelings, right? You come back. Yeah, so he puts it into autonomy, right? So you come back and you know that this is you, right? You made a choice and you recognize yourself, right? And so this is SDT theory and how it, and like what motivates humans to do things. And this has to do more with sticking with a game than just giving it a try initially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think one of the more interesting aspects of this is that there are, I think, limits to just how far a game can motivate somebody to keep playing. And that could certainly be a topic for the next time we talk. Because there are games that are built very much to be as replayable as possible. But it doesn't mean that the players want to be invested in it. There are people who have played games like Disgaea for 5 to 10 hours and call it quits. There are those who've played it for 80 to 100 hours and they're still going in it.
Right. Yeah, that would be another interesting talk to have, or just another topic of like, you know, how long does your game need to be, right? Because you have games that are designed to take up your entire life. You know, there's just endless amounts of grinding, but then there's other games that they're meant to be completed in a couple of hours, or 5 hours, or 20 hours, or 30 hours, and then the game's done. There's really nothing else to do, right?
Mm-hmm. And then there are some games that they'll give you 3, 5, 1,000 hours of content, but it's just repeating the same thing again and again and again, and players don't get tired of it.
Right, and I would, in some ways, like multiplayer games, especially competitive multiplayer games, fit into that, where it's like, well, you once you've played the game, like there's one match, right? There's no new map, like League of Legends, right? There's one map, and there's only so many champions, right? And I don't think people play League of Legends to try new champions. They play League of Legends to become good at the champions that they enjoy.
Yeah.
There is an element of trying new champions, and that I think keeps bringing people back, right? And that keeps you interested in the game. It shakes things up. But like the primary motivation is, can I become good at the game?
Yeah.
By doing it over and over again.
Mm-hmm. And when you become good at a game, that I think is another very interesting point. It goes back to a conversation that I talked about this like a few years ago, the idea of the quote-unquote Chick parabola. This was named after game journalist Tom Chick, who described his motivation and interest in a game declining the more he mastered it. And there's definitely discussions about that, like what happens when you see the man behind the curtain and you know everything about this game. Does it still interest you compared to when you're still learning and still discovering things?
That's a really interesting question. I've never thought too much about that. I think there's a certain point where you feel like you've completed everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess maybe I've never thought about it because I'm really bad at finishing games. I have finished so few games in my last 10 years of being a person who tries to make games and plays them a lot. I think I've finished maybe 3 games I can think of. I finished Hades was a recent game that I finished from Supergiant Games. That game would be really fun to do an analysis. I'm just going to write these down really quick. So Warframe, Hades. I'd like to analyze Hades maybe in the next episode. That game is a roguelike, so you have replayability, but there is also a point where you beat the game because you've done all of the bosses and all of the levels that are in the game, and then it's like you can grind it and do it at higher difficulties for actually forward. And then they do come out with new content every few months because it's still in early access, and that's sort of their development cycle. But I beat the game a couple months ago, got to the final boss, killed it, and I was done. I was like, all right, I beat this, I accomplished it, I'm ready to move on with my life, but I gained a lot of joy out of this product. And I'm going to come back to it now that I know there's new content and new updates, right? And probably once I beat the final boss, I'm going to be done. I'm not going to grind it for those higher scores. So I think that sort of comes down to what type of player are you, right? Like, are you a player who cares about getting the best score in the world? Then yeah, you're going to grind it and like become a speed runner, right?
Yeah. Or do you care about 100% completion? Filling your entire lore book, getting all the achievements, seeing every story beat, things along those lines.
Mhm. Yeah. So yeah, there's like different ways of or just different types of players, right? Like, are you a replayability player who
Mm-hmm.
wants different things, or are you just sort of going to complete it once? The other games that I've played to completion in recent memory have been Shadow of Mordor was one of the first games that I played to completion in the past like 3 years. I beat it like right as I was about to go to college, and I was like really proud of myself for finishing that game. I 100%ed the main game. I did not 100% the true DLC for the game. I beat the entire campaign of the Bright Lord DLC, and I like played like an hour of the Beast Hunters DLC. I didn't really enjoy that one as much, so I kind of didn't finish it. Um, and I I think the reason that I 100% of that game was I liked the mechanics so much that I wanted to experience all of the new stuff you could do with it. And then
Mm-hmm.
I did actually try and like get higher scores because they had like speed running like modes where you just spawn in and you try and kill as many orcs as possible, right? Um, and I'm kind of curious now that I'm thinking about it. Like, did I do that because I wanted the score or because I enjoyed the mechanics? I think
Mm-hmm.
like because I enjoyed the mechanics and they had that option for me to replay it and try and get that score, I did that. And if they didn't have that, I wouldn't have had that opportunity to try and be better at the game.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think that's just an interesting thing to think about when you're designing a game. Is are you going to have those opportunities for a player to come back to it once they finished it?
And then there are some games that really try to push for that competitive high score streak, but didn't necessarily, I think, work out all that well. So there's the Just Cause games, which has it's like online integration no matter what you do, and a lot of people just didn't really care about that. They just wanted to play the game and do their own thing. They didn't need to see, you are 57 seconds behind your best friend, and then you're 137 seconds behind him, and so on.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm trying to think. There's must have been like one other game that I 100%ed in the last 3 years. Um, The Witcher 3. I beat the entire main campaign. I beat the entire Hearts of Stone DLC, and I did not finish the Blood and Wine DLC yet. I saved that for rainy days when I'm just like I want to do something that that's sort of my thing that I go back to, and I slowly chip away at it because I savor that game. Um, there appears to be a trend where my favorite games, I finished the main campaign and one of the two DLC, and then never finished the like final DLC for the game. Uh, I don't know if I'm cursed or that's just who I am. But I think it's really something that I kind of want to see what people are saying in chat. So someone said, Andrew said, if devs create a winning formula like League or Dota, you see what they did, make such a success, how are you not able to follow that example and expand on it? Why so much failure? That's a really interesting question, right? Like, what keeps those people as like the main successes, and why don't people expand on it? Um, I guess what would you have to say about that?
Which one?
Andrew's comment: devs create a winning formula like League of Legends or Dota, and why do people fail when they try and expand on that formula?
Hmm.
Why is that so hard?
Hmm. I mean, I think we could certainly ask Cliffy B with Lawbreakers that question as well.
Um, yeah, I think there's something to be said for um, copying a game is not usually a formula to success. You have to bring something new to the table. And just from my own experience, I don't really have much like theory behind this, but from my own experience, when I started making my game, Revn, I did not set out to make a MOBA. We now call ourselves a MOBA, and we now incorporate a lot of MOBA design elements, and we talk about ourselves as a MOBA. We can compare ourselves and look at like how we're similar. But this was not part of the initial design. The initial design was it's going to be a third-person shooter where you can build things, and it's going to be competitive, and you're going to work as a team, right? And like we just sort of started with a set of mechanics and then this idea of building bases and attacking the enemy base. And that was just like what we started with. We started with more of the essence of the game rather than starting with comparisons to other games or what genre it was going to be. And then as the game evolved and we started to make mechanics and test them, we like started to see after maybe 2 years, we saw really like, okay, we have basically created a MOBA. Like we have the same design principles, the same things are important to us with competitive integrity and character progression and customization and stuff. And I think that's sort of the that would be my insight into the why copycats fail. Is it's really hard to make a good game if you start by saying, well, I want to copy that but do it better.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be more about you have to figure out what is the essence of that original game, and then like boil it down to that, and then make that your design principle or your design pillars in your game design document, and just start from there. Like, and don't worry about other, right? You want to make something original, something that can stand on its own.
And I think another point that a lot of developers don't want to hear is that there is, I think, a limit on how many things you can copy, or how much interest there is in a specific genre or a specific type of game. Like, again, like the beauty about independent development is everybody is doing their own thing. And, one game is not going to have any real influence over another. But if we look at Battle Royale, for instance, right now the big ones are PUBG, Fortnite. We could maybe say I think Apex Legends is moving up there. But
yeah, I definitely put Apex up there.
How much interest would there be for 5 more Battle Royale games of similar size and scope?
Right. I think you're seeing this with Battle Royale modes getting tacked onto the series shooters that come out every year, the franchise shooters like Call of Duty and Battlefield. Yeah. They both have Battle Royale modes, but you don't really hear people talking about them. Yeah. And I think, if you're trying to make a game that copies a game that's like a AAA game, that's a mainstream game, all the entire audience is already on that. You have to present a pretty convincing argument to pull them away from that. And I think we saw that with Apex Legends. Was they did do something new. It's an entirely new universe. It wasn't the Fortnite world, and it wasn't the sort of gritty realism of PUBG. It was using the Titanfall universe, which I think is really cool. They got great characters. It was a first-person shooter. The movement is made by Respawn, so of course it's going to be some of the best in class. And they went at it from that standpoint. Like, they had some really good stuff going on, and that was able to pull people away. It got me interested. I hate Battle Royale games personally. I have almost no fun playing Battle Royale games. And Apex Legends came out, and I played it straight for 2 weeks. I played it constantly with my friends for 2 weeks. I don't play it. I stopped playing it after that. I had my fun. I wasn't interested in becoming good at it, but it was that good that someone that hated Battle Royale games played it for 2 weeks, every day with his friends. Yeah.
And I think that point may be something we want to also talk about later on, about can you motivate somebody who is the complete opposite of your game to play it? I had this conversation with my friend who's also named Josh. I talked about what would be my dream Battle Royale game. And when I described to him, he said this sounds like the complete antithesis of the Battle Royale genre.
I'm kind of curious, what was your ideal Battle Royale?
I wanted more variance in the runs. I wanted there to be more events, more, adaptability in terms of what can happen in each play, in terms of not having to be focusing on the same strategies each kind of playthrough, the same kind of guns.
That'd be interesting. I'm sort of thinking, I'm sort of thinking of it as like roguelikes meets
I was
Battle
about
Royale.
to say roguelike, more like rogue-ish elements in the Battle
Right.
Royale.
Yeah, that'd be a really cool game to make. I would try that. I would try and play that. Like if you had a game where the map changed every time you spawned into it,
Yeah.
and the weapons spawned with just like random stuff. Because like I think the I'm trying to think of like what is the essential appeal of battle royale that's like
Mm-hmm.
why is it so popular? And this is why I don't like battle royales. Is I think I've boiled down what makes battle royales fun to the people who enjoy them, and these are not things that I find fun. Generally, is it's totally random, right? You don't there's 100 players out there, so you don't know who you're playing against. You're spawning randomly onto the map. You don't really know where you're going to land or where you're going to start. You don't know what weapons you're going to have available, right? There's lots of random factors. The zone, the circle, is a random spot on the map, and it shrinks, right? And like has different hotspots that pop up randomly. Apex Legends has like supply drops that fall from the sky at random locations.
Mm-hmm.
Fortnite had like balloons or something, right? Everything's random. There's random stuff all over the place, and the appeal of the game, I think, is can you handle the randomness? Can you master the game and the mechanics and adapt to all of the random stuff that's going on and still come out on top?
Yeah.
Right.
And
I don't enjoy that. Like I didn't enjoy that in Fortnite or in Apex because of what my main problem with those games is reactivity. Is you get shot, you're probably going to die because someone else got the jump on you, and then you're dead. And there's no respawning. So like, to me, it felt really hard to react to things that happen to you in the game. It's a lot of chance of like, well, did someone see you from far away and they just so happen to have a sniper rifle?
and you're dead.
You didn't have any control over that, and then once the event happens, you're not really able to react to it because of the way the game is designed.
Yeah. And I think
so,
like the funny thing for me is like I think we talked about this on previous casts, like Fortnite, Counter Strike, Apex Legends, those games are incredibly stressful for me. And I can sit and play something like Sekiro or The Binding of Isaac or Diablo Hardcore, and those are like my relaxing Zen games. Like that's what I play to unwind. And like one-on-one in Rainbow Six or in Counter Strike just like made my heart, I was like getting like the heart going a mile a minute kind of thing.
yeah. I think I just sort of doubled down on my point about being able to react. That's like I think there's a spectrum, and for me, it felt like battle royale games. Your ability to control the world and react to it is really small, and this I think sort of falls into SDT theory, where you've got there's competence and autonomy and relatedness, and I think autonomy is sort of that idea of do you have agency, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is why I wasn't interested in the games. I felt like I'm not interested in the current battle royale games. Is I don't feel like I have agency to control the world. Like I feel like there's so many things out of my control that I don't have fun. I don't stay with the game. And Rainbow Six Siege is a pretty hard game, and if you're not good at the game, that agency is very quickly taken away from you. If you don't know the maps and your reaction times aren't good enough, you probably will die as soon as someone sees you and starts shooting at you. And I think that takes that agency away from the player. But once you become good at the game, which I have not, but like once you learn the maps and you got your reaction times up and you're better at the mechanics, you can begin to react to things, and then all of a sudden you've regained agency and control over the game, so you stick with it.
I guess
on like another end of the spectrum, just to sort of finish up the spectrum, is where like my game Revn and League of Legends and MOBAs sort of land. I feel is the combat is slowed down to the point where someone shoots you or they smack you with a sword in League of Legends, you can run away, right? You have control over whether or not you die, especially like at the beginning of the game. At the end of the game, someone might be so far over leveled than you, and you didn't level up, and they can like kill you in 1 or 2 hits. But especially early game, I feel like League of Legends is balanced in such a way that you are able to react and have agency over, do I die here or do I run away?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. Again, it goes back to the whole thing with Battle Royale, that somebody gets a drop on you with a sniper rifle, 9 out of 10 times, if he gets that first shot, you're dead, kind of thing. When you're playing in something like a fighting game or MOBA style game, just because that person got the drop on you doesn't automatically mean they win. He's going to, you may still have a chance to get around that in some aspect. And there are games that are either like too fast or too slow in that regard, where it could be, you're winning for like a minute, the guy pops an ultimate, you automatically lose. That would be a little bit too unfair. But if you're able to do things fast enough and maybe, outplay the person, I think that kind of idea of outplaying could be a major point too.
Yeah, and I think that sort of also touches on, you mentioned ultimates. Ultimates are something that I've always kind of disliked personally, especially in like PvP type games, like Overwatch. And now that you mentioned it, I'm sort of thinking about it. Like, I think it comes down to that agency and reaction time. It's like, well, if someone uses their ultimate, is there really anything I can do? Or am I just am I screwed?
Is it, like with Overwatch, like if somebody pops, what was his name, Zangetsu, or the one who shoots like the giant dragon at you, like if he just shoots that ult at you,
Hanzo shoots a dragon. If you can't get out of the way, you die. But I would argue that Hanzo's ultimate is actually, there is agency there. You are able to run away, right? You can hopefully you're not trapped somewhere you can't get out of it. And so I would say, like, yeah, it is actually well designed. Personally, I'm still not like entirely happy with the idea that, well, you're just like trying to like charge up this meter so you can like get these like massive power spikes. I would rather not have that in my type of games that I play. But they're also, I think they were careful to allow agency to avoid those ultimates that just completely finish you.
Yeah, and that was like to a point I wanted to make. I think this will be my last one. We'll be here for like another hour or two. About one of the differences between Apex Legends and the other Battle Royale games. That in Apex, the various champions have ultimate powers. They have something that they can pop at any time. It's not like, again, like with the Fortnite example. In Fortnite, somebody gets a drop on you, you're going to get shot and chances are you're going to die. In Apex Legends, somebody gets a drop on you, you may have your ultimate saved up that may be able to get you out of it, or maybe just outright get rid of the person, thereby giving you a little bit more control over what's happening in the situation.
Yeah, I think that's really an important point you made there. Yeah.
All right.
And like you said, it's getting late. We've been doing this for almost like 2 hours. I should make some dinner.
Yeah, the little conversation. Thankfully, because you pushed the cast back, I had dinner before the cast, so I was prepared this time. But that's good. Ideally, if we do this as a regular series, maybe we can shoot for like 2 to 3 game analysis, maybe hour tops, and like kind of play it by ear there.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. I would like to make this like maybe a monthly thing where we do an hour. We could do 2 to 3 games, and I think if we sort of allot ourselves, maybe if we allotted ourselves 10 minutes per game to analyze it, and then we gave ourselves, that if we did like 3 games, that's 30 minutes, and that gives us another 30 minutes to sort of discuss everything before and after.
That sounds good. And for the chat watching this, either live or recorded, let us know what you think about this in the comments below. Because this is kind of being like a trial experiment here, I'm going to get this cast up a lot sooner. It may go up like in the middle of the week this week, just so people can have time to look at it and get their thoughts on it. I'm trying to plan another like regular series with game developer Tomo, who we've had on for several casts. So it would be nice to kind of have like these, like a special like theme cast or a special like series for each month. That I think would be a lot of fun. Would also, I think, be very different from a lot of other discussions.
I think it would also be kind of fun if we could bring some other people on. If you have other guests, and we could bring them on to this series, and then we could talk, and get their inputs. Because as we saw tonight, each of us have sort of different ways of seeing some of these games. Some of us seem to think that, yeah, this is really good at this one thing, or maybe it doesn't have the best combat or story. And so it'd be really interesting to hear different people's perspectives on that.
Yeah. And I think
it says we should do it every day.
That's their answer to That's their response to everything that we do. Just do it every day. Just stream 24 hours a day. You can do it, Josh. Nothing bad will happen with that.
Andrew wants to see. I think he's saying he wants to see us analyze Revn. I would love to do that. Let's put that on a list of ones for a future episode. I have done this personally myself. 3 years ago, when I started making Revn, was right about when I watched Jason's talk at GDC, and I was in the middle of designing Revn and figuring out what type of game it was going to be. And I watched that talk, and I went, "All right, I'm going to print out that chart." And I colored it all in, and I figured out what type of game I want to be. And if we're lucky, I'm gonna try and dig that up. I'm gonna see if I can find that file, my original analysis, and then we can do. I won't look at it. I'll find the file, and then let's analyze it and see how it lines up.
Yeah, that would be kind of interesting to do. Yeah, especially that would be something for certain games. It would be amazing to talk to a developer to see how much the game grows for a live service game. Going back to Warframe with the same motivations they had in Warframe earlier, be the same motivations they have in the game now. And thank you, for the $5 super chat there. Thank you, rate it not bad.
I rate this cast not bad.
That's my response whenever someone asks me about game live. Because it's either not bad or I go into a 30-minute conversation while I'm trying to play the game. And yeah, John, we'll be doing a game stream later tonight. But for myself, if you'd like to follow me in Game Wisdom, I'm on Twitter at GWBicer. There are links to our Discord and Patreon linked down below. Patreon subscribers will usually get early and ad-free access to a lot of these design talks. And I do my regular streaming around 9:30 EST for game streams. And again, these special game dev casts whenever we can get the guests on. But for you, Silas, what are the best places that people can find you?
So I'm on Twitter as well, at Silas_Talley. You should follow me there. You can also follow my game is on Twitter as well, at Revn Game. And we have a Discord, which is probably the best place to chat with me about the game that we're making. And if you just like talking about game design theory, I love hearing about it. Do that in our Discord, or just tweet at me on Twitter, DM me, whatever. I'm pretty open. You got things to say about game design, I love talking about it. I also stream on Twitch. It's twitch.tv/Silas Talley. I do a lot of game development streaming on there, so I'll stream while I'm working on my game, whether that's doing art or coding or designing things. So I'm trying to do that a lot more recently. Last year, I didn't get to do nearly as much as I wanted to. Back in 2017, I was streaming every single day for 6 hours. It was great. I loved it. We had tons of views, and it was so much fun. And then 2019 hit. Or that was 2018. 2018 was great. 2019 was the year that Silas did not get to stream much because I was trying to finish my college degree. And it turns out that takes time and focus. So, but now I'm done with that. I've got my degree, and I'm doing a lot more streaming. So I try to stream every couple of days. And if there's support for it, if we have a lot of people watching, I would try and stream every day so we can go in and we show people how we make the game that we're making. And so we try and teach people about design and code. And I love taking questions from people who are like, "Hey, how do we do this thing?" And I'll take a break from what I'm working on, and I go and I sort of demo. Here's, oh, you want to know how to make a door that opens when you walk up to it? I'll show you how to do that. If it's not taking too much of my time away from whatever I'm working on, it's sort of I try and prioritize. But it's always fun to interact with viewers like that.
Yeah. And we will, of course, have plenty of game dev and game design chats in the Game Wisdom Discord as well. But I think that is going to do it. So again, for the people watching this recorded, let us know what you think in the comments below, and Silas and I will chat again kind of on our own on Discord, and we'll see about when we can kind of set up a regular night or regular schedule for doing these things.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Oh, and one last thing for Revn, any updates about when you'll open up or have another public beta or alpha?
Okay, so we are currently in closed alpha, which means if you sign up on our website, we will probably approve you for a key, and you'll get an email, and then you can register it on Steam, and you can play with us. We have playtests every Wednesday and Saturday evening, and that's sort of the current status of the game. We are working towards a more open beta later this year. I do not have a release date yet for that. When we do that, we'll just open it up and you can just download the game on Steam. You won't need to register or anything. That's going to be later this year. We'll have more information. That's all I can say.
All right. So that is going to do it. Before we get into hours 3, 4, 5, and 6 of this chat, I will let Silas go have dinner for now. And yep, I'm sure we'll be talking again in the future. Thanks again for suggesting the topic. And for anyone else, if you would like to come on for some of these casts, live or recorded or whatever, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. But